Great. I think we are live now. Mm, how do we know if we are audible and visible? Okay. Yeah, we will sort of kickstart the conversation soon as we get a thumbs up from the team that people can see and hear us. Okay. I think we are now live and people can hear us. Okay, great. Um, আমরা তাহলে শুরু করছি আজকের লাইভটা। মার্ক্সবাদী পথের ফেসবুক এবং ইউটিউব পেজে আপনাদের সকলকে স্বাগত। আমি সোনালী এবং আমার সঙ্গে আজকে রয়েছেন প্রফেসর সামিয়া আল বোথমে, যিনি সরাসরি আমাদের সাথে যোগ দিয়েছেন ওয়েস্ট ব্যাংক থেকে। বিগত দীর্ঘ সময়কাল ধরে আমরা দেখেছি প্যালেস্টাইনে যে অস্থির পরিস্থিতি চলছে, আজ তার নিরিখে আমরা আলোচনা করব মূলত এই যে জেনোসাইড চলছে তার শিক্ষাক্ষেত্রে কি প্রভাব হচ্ছে সেই নিয়ে আমরা বাকি আলোচনাটা করব। বাকি গোটা আলোচনাটা আমরা ইংরেজিতে করব আজকে। So as I was mentioning to begin with, a very, very warm welcome to you, Dr. Samia. It's truly an honor to have you with us today, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Right?
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So for everybody who are like watching the live, I would give like a brief introduction about the profound journey that you have so far. So speaking about Dr. Samia, she has been an assistant professor in economics at the Faculty of Business and Economics, Birziet University. She was also the director for the Center of Development Studies at Birziet University till 2014. She worked with the Palestine Economic Policy Research Institute in Ramallah as a researcher. She has completed her PhD at the School of African and Oriental Studies, University of London in labor economics. Her areas of interest majorly includes, and also the publications that she had made are um, around gender economics, labor economics, and political economy of development. She has engaged in research on alternatives to neoliberal development in the West Bank and Gaza Strip and gender differentials and labor market outcomes. So as we know, and like we can see that you do have a profound journey and a profound, like a spectrum of work that you have done in the academia, Dr. Samia. So on the same lines, we were sort of curious to know a few things with you, which I will come to you slowly as we move on in the conversation. To begin with, I think as I was mentioning that as at this moment, Palestine, like both Gaza and the West Bank, continues to face this ongoing and deeply distressing situation, right? Like the reports suggest now we are seeing it everywhere that there are discussions around a possible ceasefire between Palestine and Israel that are underway. Though I think we are yet to see where it's truly headed, because in past 2 years, at least 67,000 Palestinian people have lost their lives, amongst which at least 20,000 are just children, and more than 2,300 education facilities have been destroyed, shut down, leaving thousands of children and youth without access to education. So, as we understand, it's a pretty grave situation, and the entire world, like we are all in it with you, right? So, today the discussion that we are sort of aiming to have with you and intending to understand from you is around education amidst genocide. So before we move on into a few questions that we had, and the thoughts that we were having, which we were curious to understand from you, I would kind of really invite you to maybe speak a few words about your take on this very topic itself, that is education amidst genocide. So yeah, over to you, Dr. Samia.
Thank you, and thanks for hosting me. Actually, it's very exciting to be talking to students and colleagues in the South because we mostly have been talking to Europe and North America. So this is really an excellent opportunity. Um, the ongoing genocide in the Gaza Strip has been detrimental to the lives and livelihoods of the Palestinians there. 2.3 million Palestinians have been crushed as part of Israel's genocidal process. As we see on TV, it's really genocide that's screened live on TV. So we see how the destruction of houses, destruction of buildings, but most importantly, destruction of lives, destruction of people's lives, children, women, men, old people, as well as the destruction of systems, and part of which is the system of education. The destruction of buildings has been significant, of course, in terms of schools, universities, research centers, all sorts of educational centers. But most importantly, the destruction of the lives of educators, be it school teachers, be it university academics, be it researchers, scientists, scholars, but also students. I mean, you've spoken about the 20,000 children who have been murdered by Israel as part of its genocidal atrocities targeted at the Palestinians. Those are mostly students, in addition to young people studying at universities, colleges, and so on. So the destruction to the lives of people has taken different forms. Very much of it is what we call scholasticide, and scholasticide is the destruction of the educational lives of people, be it the infrastructure, but more importantly, the educators themselves and the students. So this is what has been happening in the Gaza Strip, in the West Bank, where there has been also a grave impact of Israel's genocide in the Gaza Strip had impacted the West Bank. We have had many closures of universities. Movement restrictions have been disrupting education. Also, there is an issue with transfer of Palestinian custom duties to the Palestinians. Israel collects these at the borders and then transfers these to the Palestinians. These financial resources are basically the backbone of the finances for the public sector, i.e., education. The fact that Israel has been withholding these resources meant that the public sector couldn't pay public civil servants now for more than 4 years. As a result, the education week has been shrunk from 5 days a week to 3 days a week. And this is for school children. This has had grave repercussions for education. Now, for us, education is very important as a people because we see education as a mechanism of resistance, and this is why we tend to be the most educated population in the Middle East, because we link education not just to labor market outcomes or knowledge or so on. For us, it's a tool of resistance, it's a tool of survival, it's a way of challenging colonialism on the ground. So the impact of the war has been grave in terms of impacting education in general, be it in the Gaza Strip where the genocide is ongoing, or the West Bank where a different form of colonial policies are at work.
Absolutely, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And I think these are like sort of like really important insights which you're speaking about. Because people like us who are sitting outside, a lot of times we get to see the reality through like a media, right? So more and more we get to hear from you who's kind of witnessing it, firsthand. I think it definitely enriches a lot of our perspectives as well. On the same lines, I mean, I think one very important thing that you have mentioned is that education is not just a just a thing, just a superficial element in the socio-economic structure, but also a means of resistance, like a weapon, right? So historically, we have seen that how in any struggle, uh, it's always been like a intent for the oppressor to kind of tap into that sphere and destroy it out and out, right? So just to know a little more about you on the same line, as now we are getting into the conversation as well. Uh, what we were sort of curious to know from you is that very deeply rooted someone is very deeply rooted in academia. How do you personally see this struggle shaping the world of education and society at large? Like, what are your personal takes on it?
Um, I mean, in a way, the fact that Israel has been engaged in this genocide in the Gaza Strip, with the entire world recognizing that it is a genocide, it is impacting education gravely in terms of restricting access to education, destroying both students and educators. All of this brings back really the meaning of education. I mean, brings us back to what education means. Lately in the world, over the past 30 years or so on, we've been directed to think of education within a process, as a process of embettering ourselves economically, while these neoliberal tendencies have been working hard at separating education from politics. Education is a tool of getting us to earn better wages, is a tool of getting us to make things better. Yet this what has been happening in the Gaza Strip emphasizes the link between education and politics. It's really all linked to politics in the sense that at the heart of the destruction of education is a colonial process trying to undermine the existence of a people, and therefore preventing the Palestinians from accessing education has been a political act at the heart of the ethics of education. So I see, in a way, this sort of delinking education from politics. The impact of this genocide has brought us back to think more profoundly about this issue. That over the past 30 years, we've been pushed actually to think that of this dealing as being reasonable and sensible. Yet this has showed us that it actually is not. The other issue linked to education and the ongoing genocide in Palestine is the fact that really the colonialism is alive and kicking. And within these colonial structures, we as developing countries, various peoples, are still regarded as not third world, but probably fifth or sixth or whatever. We're not seen as equal human beings. And therefore, when our educational institutions are destroyed, when students and educators are murdered, they're not seen with the same light as a white person, a white person's being affected by these atrocities. So Israel's hostages held in the Gaza Strip are seen as much more worthy of the 2.3 million Palestinians. because of the colonial reality of us being the colonized population and Israel being the colonizer. Israel is being part of the white world. We are part of the black world. So this reality that we thought as countries that have fought for liberation from colonialism in the last century, that it had actually, we've moved a bit from there. We actually haven't moved. This colonial reality takes different forms. Yet, in our case, the form is so extreme that we are not viewed as equal human beings. Our educational system and our educational institutions are legitimate targets by Israel. And for very much of the time, till now, actually, European and North American the governments of Europe and North America, they do not see a problem with that. It's the peoples of the world that see a problem with that. And therefore, this stance of ongoing and colonialism being alive and kicking is still is an issue that is alive. And this has actually this has impacts on the way we see colonialism today, the way we see the relationship between developing and developed countries, and its impacts and repercussions on education, how we theorize also around that. Scholasticide within Palestine is an issue that we talk about a lot, and we theorize a lot around it. Our contributions also to academia within the area of education also focus on operationalizing logics of elimination within colonial studies and so on. Unfortunately, all these issues have been discussed in the context of elimination of the indigenous populations in Australia, in North America. Now there is another form for it in Palestine. And then issues of how apartheid manifests itself again in Palestine. So the theorizing and the application of all these notions as part of the Palestinian experience, be it scholasticide, apartheid, elimination, logic of the indigenous populations, all of that is brought to the front again, faced by this ongoing genocide in Palestine.
Yeah, absolutely, completely hear you on that. Because you touched upon, like the broader aspect as well when you were speaking about this with respect to identity and all of that. So, um, one question that was coming to my mind is that, about the greater struggle itself in some way. So, would love to understand from you. That many of us, we have been hearing about the BDS movement in itself, right? But we may not really know much about it. So in relation to everything that you were just speaking about, Dr. Samia, could you also tell us in very simple terms that what it stands for and how this relates to the identity struggle which you were mentioning, and the broader sphere of education as well?
The BDS movement is a resistance movement, and BDS stands for Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions. It's a movement that the Palestinians originated in 2005. So it's not a recent movement. It has been around for over 20 years now. And the movement basically calls for applying pressure on Israel to basically end its colonization of Palestine and the Palestinians. And this pressure is applied in different forms. in terms of academic boycott, economic boycott, cultural boycott, and sports boycott. So we have called on the rest of the world, be it international peoples of the world, organizations like trade unions, student groups, and so on, to boycott Israel's culture, academia, to boycott Israel's goods and commodities, to boycott Israel's sports as a form of pressure to decolonize. And the movement has been around for many years now, and as part of the response of the world to the ongoing genocide, there has been an intensification process of the BDS movement. So groups around the world, peoples have been boycotting Israel in different forms. We have been asking for arms embargoes to be applied on Israel as part of the sanctions applied on Israel, but also to divest from Israel, to divest from Israeli companies, to divest from international companies that invest in Israel. The movement is international. It has been extremely successful in terms of applying pressure on Israel, yet it still needs to turn all this popular support from support of the people of various civil society organizations to pressure on governments to apply sanctions on Israel. The movement very much learns from the experience of South Africa, of course, in this respect, as one of the models where boycotts have been one element of resistance. So this also applies to India by in a way, practicing boycott of Israeli goods and commodities and services, by boycotting companies that engage in supporting Israel's colonization, or by boycotting Israeli companies, and then pressuring the Indian government to put pressure on the government to sanction Israel, to pressure Israel is also very important. There is the BDS National Committee, which is a coordinating committee that suggests campaigns. So there are various campaigns around the world, for example, to boycott a particular company, for example, HP, for its engagement in surveillance, in providing surveillance tools for very many genocidal activities happening in the Gaza Strip, or in for the apartheid wall in the West Bank, and these campaigns then would bring campaigners from many countries around the world, and this is how pressure is multiplied, and this is how pressure becomes effective through working from around the world to apply pressure on same companies. India has historically been supportive of the Palestinians, yet lately it has not. It has shifted towards Israel. And that is very unfortunate, because our work with India all over the past 60 years has been, in a way, in one direction, and the past 10 years have been in another. The Indian government has shifted towards cooperation with Israel, and really has not been providing very much support for the Palestinians. It's important to work at changing that. We at the end of the world, at the end of the time, we are peoples that have suffered from colonialism, and the colonizers have not really changed. uh, by India aligning itself with colonizers. This is really not a step forward. And therefore, it is important to have politically ethical stands and principled stances, and it's important to for us to work together for decolonization, towards ending colonialism, apartheid, genocide, rather than working with the governments that engage in genocide, and not just work with these governments, but forge friendships and alliances and cooperation. So it's very important to engage in BDS. There are many campaigns that are listed on the BNC. The BNC stands for the BDS National Committee, that basically coordinates campaigns around the world for applying pressure on Israel. So it's important to check these. It's important to engage in various BDS activities. And it's important to mainstream these. Lately, there has been many companies withdrawing from working with Israel, from like the Norwegian fund, which is the largest fund in the world. It has been putting limits on engagement with Israeli companies or companies supporting Israel. Of course, that impacts Israel, isolates Israel, and that's important on the route to decolonization and liberation.
Very important, informations and like understanding that you're providing, Dr. Sami. Thank you so much for that. I would just one I would want to thank you for touching upon the Indian aspect as well, right? Because most of our viewers are from this country, and I think it's really important for us to also kind of gauge that where we are stranded in this whole discourse, right? Like what's our stance, and would also love to like kind of tell you and let our viewers know as well that people of India, like the people like us, the common people, we are with Palestine. We are standing in solidarity with all of you. So yeah, that is just something that really felt like putting out there after hearing everything that you were talking about, right? Um, Shifting the focus a little bit, because this is something also we were thinking about, as like a part of the integral education system per se. That in the beginning, when we were speaking about that, so many educational facilities and institutions have been destroyed and shut down, and so many children have been killed over the course of time. How do you see the future of education overall, right? And what do I mean by this, to be specific, is that like if you look at the schools and the classrooms, what's changing the most for children and young learners growing up in this sort of an environment?
I mean, it's difficult to conduct an educational process under these circumstances, but we persevere. It's important to continue with education, and as I said, for us as Palestinians, education is extremely important as a way of living, as a way to survive, but also as a way to challenge colonialism. Students, for example, we've been giving classes to university students in the Gaza Strip, electronic teaching. So we've been volunteering from various Palestinian universities to conduct classes, and we've organized this with the university committee of Gaza universities, so that we run classes for Gaza students, and if they can join the class, then they're maybe able to have some education. We get a lot of students to register, but very many cannot attend. So we have, for example, if 100 registered, five of them are usually able to attend. And these five attend under very difficult circumstances, but we still insist on trying to hold these classes because it's a way of really continuing. It's a way of challenging the status quo, which is genocide. It's a way of keeping people's spirits up, but also it's a way of preserving something which is very important, which like education. And the same applies to school education. They've been running very many classes in the Gaza Strip, um, in tents, in homes, in whatever homes, in open space. Here in our universities and schools in the West Bank, on very many days we cannot reach our schools because we have checkpoints that restrict us from moving from one place to another, but we also have gates. All our villages and towns are gated, gated not in the sense of they have gates to protect us, but they have, Israel installs gates to restrict our movement. So the moment these gates, we have around 1,000 barriers within the West Bank. And the West Bank is a very small area. And we're a very small population as well in the West Bank. We're 3 million people. It's like a neighborhood of Delhi, basically. And so Israel finds it very easy to restrict us. So on very many days we cannot reach schools or universities. We basically switch into electronic teaching. I mean, the moment we're restricted from, sorry, the moment we're restricted from education, we find different alternatives. So it's important for us to continue with our educational process, but it's also important to engage. It's been important to engage our students with trying to, in a way, survive this reality. I mean, for children, what does it mean to have your school destroyed, even here within the West Bank, several times? And then you find yourself, your school is in a tent, your teacher is killed, you can't get to your university or school. Just trying to come to terms with that, then understanding it, but then building on it to challenge this process has been also extremely important process that we've been engaged in. Sorry.
No worries. Do you want to have some water?
That's all right. Yeah, I'll get some. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I mean, this is absolutely like as I was hearing you, like I think sitting here a lot of times when we, see these informations in terms of just informations coming to us, we are not able to gauge the gravity of it, right? Like, but as I was hearing you speaking about it, I mean, it was essentially like really heartbreaking for me to hear it out, right? Just as you were talking, but uh, which brings me to my next question, which is sort of like a continuation of what you were speaking about. So now that this is a situation that we are facing in terms of the elementary or the secondary education per se, with respect to the schools and the children, what kind of impact do you see in higher education percolating to this? I'm sure there would be like a grave amount of impact, but like, would you want to touch upon that a little bit, maybe in few words?
Um, Higher education has been impacted really negatively in many respects. I talked a bit about the restrictions to reaching or accessing higher education, but there is also another grave impact, which is the arrest of our students and staff, the killing of our students and staff at universities, even within the West Bank. I mean, the Gaza Strip, we have very clear numbers, very grave situation. But within the West Bank, like my university where I teach, Birzeit University, we have more than 150 students who are in Israeli prisons. More than half of these students are under administrative detention, and administrative detention is a tool that Israel uses to arrest and detain people without charge. It's usually, if you're under administrative detention, it's a British thing actually. It's from colonial times. You are arrested for 6 months and you can remain in prison for 6 months without being charged. This can be renewed. This can be renewed for an indefinite number of times. So we have more than two-thirds of our students are under administrative detention, living under really very extremely harsh conditions in prison. Very much of the time they go in, they go out, we don't know them anymore. And they're very much tortured, not just physically, but also psychologically. We also have staff in prison, and you're monitored technologically, in the sense your access to social media, your access to what sort of posts you have. Israel monitors all of that, and you're arrested based on your access to social media or what posts you share on social media. So it's not just physical arrest and physical detainment, but it's also access to the virtual world is very restricted to our students. And so they have to live with this reality of detainment, imprisonment, murder, and so on. But also, there is another issue with education, which we call here, we term the localization of education. Movement restrictions have had an impact through which education has become very localized. um, Palestinian universities, because of the small area that we live in, historically have been specializing. Bir Zayt, for example, is very well known for engineering, for business studies, economics, and so on. Bethlehem University has specialization in education. In the north, universities have different specializations. So students would usually travel and back and forth to their homes, attend these universities. With movement restrictions, it has become extremely difficult to move. And therefore, if you come from the south, Hebron, and universities there do not offer a particular subject, you have to do with whatever they offer, because you can't go to universities in the center of the West Bank or universities in the north. This localization of education has meant that many students cannot anymore access the form of education that they want, the subjects that they choose. And of course, over the years, that's detrimental, because you don't capitalize on people's talents, wishes, aspirations, and so on. So when students here need to choose a subject or a university, they really do not think of what's on offer and they choose. They need to think of movement restrictions. They need to think of possibilities of imprisonment, being killed or detained at checkpoints. Um, a journey to your university is a life-threatening experience. So you need to shorten that as much as possible, because then the probability of being killed on the way is reduced. So this is what people think of when they think of education, which is very different from other places around the world. So the higher education system within the West Bank and the Gaza Strip is is still functioning within the Gaza Strip extremely minimally. We are able to access just, I would say, not more than 5% of the higher education students. Uh, Within the West Bank, it is running with very grave difficulties. Yet we insist, and this is how we see the process as part of resistance, as part of defying colonialism, that our education system should run, even if we use electronic teaching at times, even if we congregate within, say, Birzeit University, teaching classes at Hebron University for its students who are in the south in Hebron. So we use all of these devices to allow education to continue, because we see it as a cornerstone for resistance and not just for livelihoods.
Sure, absolutely. That's very beautifully summed up. Thank you so much for that. As a lot of discussions, but I think it's never enough, right, to hear from everything that you're going through. But as I think we are coming to sort of the to a wrap as well, like as we are sort of wrapping this conversation, I think one thing that we all really want to know from you is that what is your expectation right now from the world, right? Because that is very important. Because yeah, so just if you could tell us a little bit about that, what would you like to see more of? What kind of solidarity, what kind of responses that you would be needing to strengthen the movement, the struggle that you have been carrying out for so long, so gracefully? Yeah.
I mean, we understand that the peoples of the world are behind us. We do see the Indian people as supporting us. We understand that difference between the peoples and the governments, and therefore we call on the peoples, particularly in India, because of the historic relations, because of the comradeship in struggle against colonialism, against imperialism, against neoliberalism, all of that, to stand in solidarity with our struggle through upholding BDS, through boycotting Israeli companies, through divesting from Israeli companies, through lobbying universities to de-link themselves from Israeli universities, and through disrupting cooperation in research projects, in exchanges, and so on. So that's one level of first practicing BDS, but then also applying pressure on particular universities, institutions, community organizations to practice and apply BDS. But there is also another important tool, which is transforming all this pressure to direct it towards governments. Because at the type of pressure that the Indian government can apply is very different from the Indian people. And therefore, it's important that pressure is directed at the government to divest, but also to apply sanctions on Israel. So protesting is very important as a tool of pressuring governments, but there has to also be sorts of pressure through parliament, through I mean, you would know the tools within your own communities, but the point is to bring it to the Indian government that it is not acceptable to become an ally of genociders. The Indian people's stance is clear. I mean, we understand that, and we see it on TV, and we appreciate it. It's not something to be taken lightly. It's something that is significant and appreciated by the Palestinians. But we need to translate this solidarity into another level to bring pressure on the government, by widening our base of support, and probably engaging parliament, convincing our universities to disrupt relations, normal relations with Israeli universities, and so on and so forth. And of course, the point is to bring about an end to the genocide, but more importantly, is to bring about an end to colonialism. Because our predicament, the latest genocide, the past 2 years in relation to the Gaza Strip, is a stopover in a process of genocides, a process of colonial atrocities by Israel. And ending this genocide is important, but ending colonialism is our aim. And this is why we have to keep up the pressure till till liberation of Palestine and colonialism ends.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's a very relevant piece of, you know, piece of a word that is like sort of very relevant for the people who are watching as well, right? Because I think each and every individual in the society, in the community, can actually play a role in organizing in their own power and uh, yeah. So as we were speaking also, Dr. Samia, there have been a lot of questions that we have been receiving from the audiences as well. So with the interest of time, maybe we will not be able to speak about all the questions that we have received, but we wanted to at least address one of those. I would just read it out, and maybe you can just try addressing it perhaps. So the question is that the technocrat committee that has been formed, its functions and the claim that there will be massive investments in the coming period, will any of that actually benefit your education sector?
Um, I mean, in the Gaza Strip, we are very weary of these investments because it's not clear uh, who is to make these investments and for whose interest are they. From what we know, it's the United States who's going to orchestrate that, and of course, we should be extremely weary of these investments. There is in the agreement that has been shared on through media outlets and so on. There is no talk of these specifics. There is no talk of who's going to govern, who's going to run the show, what is going to happen to the Palestinians, what's going to happen to the Palestinian areas. Are people going to be allowed to remain in their particular towns and villages? All of that is actually not clear, and this is why this agreement is extremely um, vague. It's really vague. And the answer to this question is that we really don't know what sort of investments are going to take place, to whose interest, and how will they affect the Palestinians. By what we know is that the US is going to be behind these investments, and that's not extremely promising. Um, but we're still, I mean, we're told that all of that is going to become clear after the first stage of basically transfer of hostages and so on. But till now, none of that is really clear. We're still waiting to find out more details about these aspects, but we're not optimistic. Let me put it this way.
Got it. I think that's pretty clear. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that and everything that you have shared, Dr. Sami. I mean, I can imagine that it would be um, I mean, sort of like, like I do not really have a lot of words to express my gratitude towards you for taking out your time to educate the people out there, to engage with us and putting out your views, because I'm sure day in and day out, there is a lot that is on your shoulder and the people of the Palestine that are carrying out, right? So we completely understand and we are sort of in solidarity. It was an absolute pleasure speaking to you and knowing from you everything that the world really needs to hear and know, right? So thank you so much for engaging with us today.
Thank you, and thanks for your solidarity. It's been really a great pleasure to talk to colleagues in India. So thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And would want to sort of maybe wrap this conversation mentioning that, like we really see the movement of Palestine, the liberation movement of Palestine, as a reflection of Vietnam, right? So we say that Palestine is today's Vietnam. And the people in India, again, to iterate that we are extremely we look up to the people who are on the ground, firmly standing and carrying out this battle day in and day out. And there's a lot of love and a lot of revolutionary regards that we want to send to the people of Palestine through you, who are there on the battlefield. And we hope that we together we are able to end this genocide. Long live Palestine.
Indeed, indeed. And we believe so. We believe that the end of colonialism will become is a collective process, not just us fighting against colonialism, but us together with comrades around the world. So, and we see liberation as coming. We believe in that. And
Yeah,
this is how we live, and this is how we survive, and this is how we resist.
absolutely. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you.